Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Ord's troops began advancing against Gordon's corps, while the Union 2nd Corps began moving against Lieutenant James Longstreet's corps to the northeast. Colonel Charles Venable of Lee's staff rode in at this time and asked for an assessment, and Gordon gave him a reply he knew Lee did not want to hear. He said, "Tell General Lee I have fought my corps to a frazzle, and I fear I can do nothing unless I am heavily supported by Longstreet's corps." Upon hearing that, Lee finally stated the inevitable. "Then there is nothing left for me to do but to go and see General Grant, and I would rather die 1,000 deaths."
Oh,
Jeez.
man. Many of Lee's officers, including Longstreet, agreed that surrendering the army was the only position left. The only notable officer opposed to surrender was Longstreet's chief of artillery, Brigadier General Edward Porter Alexander, who predicted that if Lee surrendered, then every other Confederate army would follow suit. Well,
Yeah, what are
obviously,
you going to do?
Lee decided to request a suspension of fighting while he sought to learn the terms of surrender Grant was proposing to offer. A white linen dish towel was used as a Confederate flag of truce and was carried by Captain R.M. Sims, one of Longstreet's staff officers. He carried it into the lines of General Custer, who was part of Sheridan's command at that time.
Well, after a truce was arranged, Custer was escorted through the lines to meet Longstreet. According to Longstreet, Custer said, "In the name of General Sheridan, I demand the unconditional surrender of this army."
Oh, what a piece of shit.
Longstreet replied that he was not in command of the army, but if he were, he would not deal with messages from Sheridan anyhow. Custer responded that it would be a pity to have more blood upon the field, to which Longstreet suggested that the truce be respected, and then added, "General Lee has gone to meet General Grant, and it is for them to determine the future of the armies, not you."
Yeah, 8 a.m., Lee rode out to meet Grant, accompanied by 3 of his aides. Grant received Lee's first letter on the morning of the 9th of April, as he was traveling to meet Sheridan. Grant later recalled his migraine seemed to disappear when he read Lee's letter, and he handed it to his assistant Rollins to read aloud before composing his reply. "General, your note of this date is but this moment, 11:50 a.m., received. In consequence of my having passed from the Richmond and Lynchburg road, I am at this writing about 4 miles west of Walker's Church, and will push forward to the front of the purpose of meeting you. Notice sent to me on this road where you wish the interview to take place."
Grant's response was remarkable in that it let the defeated Lee choose the place of his surrender.
Right.
Lee received a reply within an hour and dispatched an aide who was Charles Marshall to find a suitable location for the occasion. Marshall scrutinized Appomattox Courthouse, a small village of roughly 20 buildings that served as a way station for travelers on the Richmond-Lynchburg stage road. Marshall rejected the first house he saw as it looked a little dilapidated, instead settling on the 1848 brick home of Wilmer McLean. McLean, he had lived near Manassas Junction during the First Battle of Bull Run and had retired to Appomattox to escape the war.
Oh, shit. Hey, fitting. The coincidence has been written of that farmer McLean, who relocated to avoid war after one of the Civil War's first battles happened on his land, would come to have the war's end negotiated in his sitting room.
Right, it's crazy.
With gunshots still being heard on Gordon's front and Union skirmishers still advancing on Longstreet's front, Lee received a message from Grant. After several hours of correspondence between Grant and Lee, a ceasefire was enacted, and Grant received Lee's request to discuss surrender terms. Oh, man.
Well, dressed in his ceremonial uniform, who, according to himself, he said, "I may be taken prisoner today. I must look my best." Lee waited for Grant to arrive. Grant, whose headache had ended when he received Lee's note, arrived at the McLean house in mud-spattered uniform, a government-issued sack coat with trousers tucked into muddy boots, no sidearms, and with only his tarnished shoulder straps showing his rank.
Look at that.
Over one shoulder was a carrying case for his binoculars. It was the first time these two men had set eyes on each other face-to-face in almost 2 decades.
Wow.
Suddenly overcame with sadness, Grant found it hard to get to the point of the meeting, and instead the two generals briefly discussed their only previous encounter, which happened during the Mexican-American War.
Yeah, I knew you were going to be a great general, but not for these guys. Lee brought the attention back to the issue at hand, and Grant offered the same terms he had before. In accordance with the substance of my letter to you of the 8th, I propose to receive the surrender of the Army of Northern Virginia on the following terms. Rolls of all the officers and men to be made in duplicate. 1 copy to be given to an officer designated by me, the other to be retained by such officer or officers as you may designate. The officers to give their individual paroles not to take up arms against the government of the United States until properly exchanged, and each company or regimental commander sign a like parole for the men of their commands. So everybody's saying, we're done. The arms and artillery and public property will be parked and stacked and turned over to the officer appointed by me to receive them. This will not embrace the side arms of the officers, nor their private horses or baggage. Oh, wow. This done, each officer and man will be allowed to return to their homes, not to be disturbed by the United States authority, so long as they observe their paroles and the laws in force where they may reside.
That's a hell of a fucking...
You're not kidding. I wouldn't say another word. I'd be like, I'm out.
Right.
Free change your mind.
These terms were as generous as Lee could hope for. His men would not be imprisoned or prosecuted for treason. Officers were allowed to keep their sidearms, horses, and personal baggage.
I mean, come on.
In addition to his terms, Grant also allowed the defeated men to take home their horses and mules to carry out the spring planting, and provided Lee with a supply of food rations for his starving army.
Look at that.
Lee said it would have a very happy effect among the men and do much toward reconciling the country.
I think it will.
The terms of the surrender were recorded in a document handwritten by Grant's adjutant, who was Eli S. Parker, who was a Native American of the Seneca tribe, and completed about 4 p.m. April 9th.
Wow. General Lee, upon discovering Parker to be a Seneca, remarked this: "It is good to have one real American here." Parker replied, "Sir, we're all Americans." As Lee left the house and rode away, Grant's men began cheering in celebration, but Grant immediately ordered them to stop. I at once sent word, however, to have it stop. The Confederates were now our countrymen, and we did not want to exult over their downfall.
Oh, that guy.
Custer and the other Union officers purchased from McLean the furnishings of the room Lee and Grant met in as souvenirs, emptying it of furniture. They want everything in that damn house.
Yeah, dude.
Grant soon visited the Confederate Army, and then he and Lee sat on McLean's home's porch and met with visitors such as Longstreet and George Pickett before the two men left for their capitals.